Good evening. Thank you all for being here, and let me thank as many of our candidates and elected officials already have to thank the Cagles. The Cagles get it right. They're not only concerned community citizens, they care about what happens in this country, and they every year, every election cycle, give of their time and their resources to make sure that everybody here knows who the candidates are, knows what their issues are, and gets out there and supports them. Let's have a hand for the Cagle family. You know, folks, ever since that trial down in Florida a couple of weeks ago, the Zimmerman trial, a lot of folks around the country are rediscovering Stand Your Ground. Well, we got news from down here in the 11th District and in Georgia. We've been standing our ground since this country began, and we don't aim to give up now. We are Stand Your Ground people in Georgia. We are Stand Your Ground people in the 11th District. And what we need to do is we need to send a message to Washington to a back-down president. He doesn't just stand his ground. He's a back-down president. We have a back-down attorney general. They don't even support, really, the rights of self-defense. Folks, when I was the U.S. attorney, when I was your U.S. attorney under President Reagan, I stood my ground on your behalf against the criminals, the con artists, the drug dealers, the money launderers across the Northern District of Georgia. When I represented the 7th District in Congress, I stood my ground for your ground against the last scoundrel we had in the White House. Does anybody remember William Jefferson Clinton? The only elected president ever impeached, a stain that he will never live down. What we need to do is we need to send these folks packing the way we sent Bill Clinton packing, the way we sent criminals packing, and we need to stand our ground against them. I have the seniority to do that, the experience to do that, the track record to do that. You know it, we know it. Help us out, send Bob Barr back to Washington to stand our ground against the forces of evil. Thank you.
We also have State Senator Barry Loudermilk, 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here again. I don't know, somebody said it was warmer this year than last year. I think I'm a little cooler than we were standing here last year. I don't know if anybody else remembers that, but it was pretty warm. Look, I don't want to talk about me. I want to talk about us. You know, we looked at it, and I appreciate the Cagles, and not only just that providing this place, but, you know, farming is a great example of American individualism. It's rugged. I mean, what you see out here is beautiful. But it's beautiful because they work hard at it. You know, when you look at farming, it's nature that brings the bounty, but it's nature that fights against everything that you do. Whether it's the wind, it's the rain, it's pestilence, it's drought, it's flood, it's continually fighting against nature. Freedom is a lot of the same. Nature gives us freedom, but our founding fathers said that government in its natural state is always going to be trying to take it from you. You're going to continually fight against the government that Thomas Paine said was a necessary evil. But the problem we have is a lot of people go to, whether it's Washington or the state capitol, they go with great ideas, they get there, and they get comfortable. They quit working the fields, they quit plowing, they quit weeding, they quit fighting against the pestilence. We have to continue to fight if we're going to win, if we're going to restore our freedom. You know, as a veteran, I was served on the honor guard, and I was taught, you know, if you see something wrong with the flag, you never hesitate. You make sure it's wrong and you go fix it. And I saw the flag flying upside down over here, and I thought here for a moment it was a sign of distress. A lot of us feel like Americans in distress, but when the flag flies upside down, it means we're in distress and we need help from the outside. We don't need help from the outside. We don't need China. We don't need Venezuela. We can fix it here. We can fix America. Thank you.
Now we're going to move on to the question period for these candidates. We do have several questions. I'm going to start with them, and we'll see how far through them we get. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the question. And the first question will actually not let you sit down long, Tricia. We're going to start with Tricia Pridemore on this, and that is, how do you plan to make an impact for 11th District constituents immediately as a freshman in the House? And you need to repeat it, let me know, goes to Senator Barry Loudermilk.
Well, thank you very much. The whole idea of being in our form of government as a representative Republican is to represent the will and the interests of the people. The only way you can represent that is if you're with the people. I'm a native Georgian. I work with my hands daily. I have a small business. I also work in the community. I see my good friend Joe Robert back here runs a mechanic shop. Many times I sit in the office with Joe and we talk about the issues, not just the issues that we are facing as a nation, but the issues that he faces running his maintenance shop. My friend Don Stevens, we ride around in his car throughout Cherokee County. We talk about the problems that are facing the economy. Look, a lot of people, the old adage is, what are you going to bring back home? Well, what most people want is less. We want less government. I'm not here to bring back a little bit of bacon. I'm here to stop the government from taking the hog.
Finally, the question goes to Bob Barr.
Thank you, Rebecca. Over the last several years, what I've done is I've been teaching constitutional law, practicing law, serving on the NRA board, helping folks in this community and communities across the country. When I served in the Congress previously, I did the things that other folks can only dream about and talk about. I actually helped balance the budget as we did in 1997. I actually voted and worked to reduce taxes. I actually voted and worked to protect our Second Amendment rights. But the interesting thing about the question Rebecca asked is, what will I do as a freshman up there, folks? I won't be a freshman. I go back to the Congress with 8 years of seniority. That's how you get things done up in Washington. A lot of folks don't know that, but I will take the experience that I have from working in the community once again over the last several years, the work that I did working to balance the budget, protect our rights in Washington previously, and put those to work as an 8-year senior member of Congress. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, and we'll start with this one. We'll go down the table and we'll start with Senator Barry Loudermilk. This one is to everyone, and would you have voted for the recent farm bill? If so, which one, Senate or House, and why or why not?
Well, that's a very good question. There's a lot of problems with the recent farm bill. First of all, the Senate version, 80% of it had to do with food stamps. What that has to do with agriculture, I have no idea. I think the House of Representatives did the right thing by splitting those out. But the problem that remains is there's a lot of subsidy in there. It's a continued amount of subsidy. Even in its current version, I could not have supported what's happening in the farm bill, because what we did is in the previous, the farm bills had put it up for a review every 5 years. We've made these subsidies permanent. They're permanent at this point. The problem with farming is too much government, it's too much taxes, it's too much regulation. If we were to remove those, as I've helped do in the state Senate here, then let's let the farmers be individual rugged as they are, and they won't need the subsidies.
Thank you. Next, Bob Barr.
No. That was the answer to the question, not to Rebecca.
All right. Our next question, and we'll start with Bob Barr. Will you vote to replace Speaker Boehner?
He may or may not be a candidate in 2 years. I'm not going to commit in advance if I don't even know who the candidates are. I will tell you that there are some good folks up there, and I hope that they do put themselves forward.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that's not the first time I've been asked that question, but it is hypothetical because we don't know what the choices are. It's just like one of you guys saying, are you going to commit and vote for one of these guys? Well, they may not be in the race by the time the election comes. So it's the same thing. The criteria is going to be who stands for the Constitution, who stands for liberty, who is the best candidate. I mean, if it's between Boehner and Pelosi, who do you want me to pick? But I also want to address something that was brought up earlier about the majority of the Republicans have to be for a bill before it can go to the floor. There's a danger in that, because I've been a Republican all of my life. I've been grassroots Republican. But you know, a lot of times in Washington, the Republicans have taken a very moderate stance, and there's a lot of stuff that we need to get done, and sometimes it's a conservative movement that we need to get a conservative bill to the floor to get something to vote on, and that could work against us.
Thank you. I'm now going to ask the last question of these candidates. I will start with Larry Marinsky and move down the table. And the question is, with every budget passed having a deficit deficit, will you ever vote for a deficit budget? Bob Barr.
Thank you. As I think I mentioned earlier, and if I didn't, I'll have to mention it again. Back in 1997, the last year that the first year in 40 years that the government of the United States of America and the Congress of the United States of America passed a balanced budget and actually balanced the budget was in 1997. I was part of that group that did it. Folks, we can do it. If we have folks up there that know how to get it done, that stand on principle, and that are not afraid to take on the powers that be, whether they be Democrat, Republican, or Independent. I also am a proud signer of the Americans for Tax Reform, no new tax pledge. What we do not need is we do not need what the U.S. government and Harry Reid is now doing, calling for $1 trillion in new, what do they call, Rebecca, investments. They don't call it new taxes, but they are trying to raise our taxes $1 trillion. As I did before, I will do again as your congressman from the 11th District. Stand up against deficit spending, reduce deficit spending, and do it without raising taxes.
Thank you. Finally, Senator Barry Loudermilk.
You know, it's really easy to answer a question hypothetically, say what you're going to do. I can tell you what I've done. Maybe the only person sitting at this table that's actually had the courage to actually vote against the budget. Several years ago, the state budget was proposed to us. We had a surplus. The government was spending it instead of sending it back to the people. There were 6 of us in the House who voted against that budget, and we were in the majority, but it was wrong. Leadership and those with seniority came. There was a lot of arm twisting. We had a lot more that was going to be on board with us, but several come and said, well, I've got so much seniority in the House, I can't upset leadership, may lose position. These types of things take courage. They take people who will stand up, will make a stand, who's not in it for themselves. Thomas Jefferson said the only fallacy he saw in our Constitution was that there was no constraint on borrowing money because that is a natural control on government. And because we don't have a balanced budget requirement, that's why government has grown, because they can just borrow the money to build another bureaucracy, another agency, another program. We have to balance the budget.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask you all to please join me in giving this group of candidates a big round of applause for being here with us this evening. I also want to let you know, because we'll just wait here for a second, there are several representatives from other campaigns here, including several who are representing U.S. congressmen who are in Washington this evening for some important votes that are going on. They will be around afterwards if you want to talk with them. They are running for U.S. Senate. Also, these guys I know will hang around.